Welcome to the Scaling with Heart podcast, where we explore how people first leadership fuels operational excellence. I'm your host, Nikki Duncan, and today's guest, Darin Newbold, truly embodies purpose driven clarity in leadership. Darin is the founder of Bold Solutions and the creator of the Bold GPS system. He's a former COO, Army veteran, certified purpose factor, and Enneagram coach, and is a powerhouse when it comes to helping overextended leaders find alignment, clarity, and confidence. Today, we'll explore how identity and purpose can transform not only leaders, but the teams and systems around them. Darin, thank you for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm very excited, Nikki. Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
You posted recently on LinkedIn about the moment when you realized something shifted internally? The night you had to stop pretending, I think is what your post said. Can you tell us what that night unlocked for you?
Yeah, it's one of those where we go through life and we live a certain way. And those influences are our parents, our people around us, and we kind of become that in a way, that persona. Yet inside of us can sometimes and is often a little bit different persona, something a little bit different that really needs to come out. And for me, a lot of that really came from recognizing that when you have a series of things happen in your life and they kind of happen more than once and over, there's a bit of a pattern there. And yeah, maybe you can blame that on someone else the first time. Maybe you can blame it on the economy the second time. But when it comes around to the third time, it's time to put a mirror to your face and say, yeah, it's probably me. And that's really what that night was all about, was recognizing, hey, I need to look in the mirror. And as my best friend likes to share with me, look in the mirror. I see the enemy. The enemy is me. And that's that poignant moment to recognize, okay, it is all on me. And while I can try to move things around in my mind, I can try to change what things might mean. But at the end of the day, if I'm the one that controls everything, I've got to change. And it was a really powerful moment because once you have that clarity, and and it's not just having the clarity, once you accept that clarity, that's that's the moment of transformation, if you will, or at least the first domino to fall in the transformation. How about we put it that way?
I like that. The first domino. That's good. You know, it's funny. We were talking right before we started this about how once upon a time I was actively publishing books. And I attended a workshop one time on how to craft the framework of a book. And the
Hmm.
guy who was doing the workshop was a screenwriter from Hollywood. And he said that the greatest books that convert to movies well all cover an identity to essence path. We
It's the
all,
hero's journey.
right? We live in our identity. This is what we think we're supposed to do. We live in our identity and we go through this series of things. And then we get a taste of what our essence is and what's truly us and our bliss. And then, you know, in the movies, they all slip back into their identity for a little bit before they finally learn to live in their essence. But it kind of sounds like it's that same thing, right? You're going along from this is what I've been doing all of the time, this is my identity, to getting that clarity on what is truly deeply meaningful to you, your essence.
It is, and that's where really understanding and building and going deep, becoming an Enneagram coach, and really adopting the Enneagram as one of the key tools that I would use, and ultimately became very familiar with because of this, to understand some to understand my motivations. And that's what really differentiates the Enneagram from other things. Is there's so many times you can have multiple people can have the exact same behavior, maybe they'll speak up in meetings. Maybe they are quiet in meetings, or maybe they get argumentative in meetings. The behaviors may be the same. The interesting piece is the motivation behind each of those. And that's where you start to peel back that onion. And that for me was that peeling of the onion. I use the domino, the onion. You can kind of use all the different pieces, but for me, it was doing that then understood something very key about my Enneagram type, that I could then say, oh, wow, this is why that happened back to, oh, wow. And I did it again. Oh, wow, I did it again. Now, that doesn't give me the reason to say, well, hey, I'm a seven, which if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a type seven, but that doesn't give me an excuse. But what it does do is it suddenly gives me, okay, now I understand. And it's that understanding that allows me to then say, okay, there's more. And then peel that back and say, all right, hey, with a little work, that thing, that trigger, that little piece that needed to change, I can now do it and have the awareness to make that happen all the time, as opposed to just hoping.
Right. Right.
But I love your message about the heroes. I can call it the hero's journey. I mean, a lot of them will call it that hero story, but yes, having that arc
Yes.
through, and yeah, I would agree with that.
It's interesting because, I've done in the last year and a half, I've done a lot of self-reflection to get really clear on who I am, what I want to do, what I've liked about my past career and life and everything, and what I wanted to change and what I wanted to do differently. So it has been a year of growth for me.
I
I've
can
gone
only imagine.
I've gone pretty deep. And and it's made me think, a lot of executives and leaders or people in the workforce we all do the same thing. We all keep working and going and living and succeeding or not succeeding by the default, or because we have to keep pushing because it's based on the role that we have or the job title that we have or the expectations that come with our job or our life. But at some point, a lot of times, those default settings seem to no longer serve us well. And when they stop working for us, then I think that's when we need to stop and take a look at why what worked in the past is not working now or in the present, and how it's not going to serve us in the future. Can you talk about some subtle ways that that misalignment will show up, and how leaders, or how it shows up in how we lead and make decisions, so that people can maybe start seeing that for themselves?
Wow, there's a lot there, Nikki. We got to unpack, but I got it. I think, and you're absolutely right. There are a lot of things that happen, but it's it's one of those, and maybe this is a. I'll use me as an example. That's probably the easiest to do. When I can't remember. I'm going to say somewhere between 7 and 11 years old. I had a mini bike, my very first mini bike, and I'd outgrown it. I wanted something bigger, and my parents said, "Hey, Darin, if you can sell this, sell the mini bike, we'll let you use that money for the next one." So I walked down the street to the house that my friend was at. I said, "Hey, you want to buy my mini bike?" They said, "Yeah." I came home, my mini bike sold. Kind of all this was all in like within a day, I mean, or less. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you could sell refrigerators to Eskimos." And fast forward, I'm in college, or actually even in high school, and then in college, and then out of college, I went to work selling computers, selling computer solutions, and those kinds of things. And between my brother, who's 7 years older than I am, he was a salesperson, and everybody had told me, "Wow, Darin, with your personality, you could sell refrigerators to Eskimos and all that kind of stuff." Because I can tend to be a little bit outgoing, and that's very common of an Enneagram, a type seven. And we're the enthusiastic visionary, so we're out there. But what was interesting is that was my type, that was my thing, and that was a pattern, as like you're talking about, that people get into. And I typecast myself big time, and I got to a point where suddenly I didn't enjoy selling, and in fact, I was At first, I didn't realize it, but I ultimately realized that I was almost actively sabotaging my own possible success in sales and becoming really crappy because I didn't want to do it. It started to make it where my skin was crawling. And now I probably went a little too far. There's other leaders out there that are going to recognize it when that thing that they thought they really enjoyed all of a sudden doesn't feel quite the same, or they don't get the same fulfillment. And that's really the big thing is I wasn't being fulfilled by these sales opportunities and stuff. Yes, I wanted to make money. I wanted to make a lot of money, and in sales you can do that. But it just wasn't working. And so those are kind of the clues or the keys that I ran into in my process that others that I've started to talk to. I'm just right before this, I was talking to one of my clients, and he's been an apartment manager for 20 plus years. And you brought up you started to say certain things that people do the same things over and over because they're kind of used to it. And you were talking about it's that job or whatever. What was interesting, the one thing you didn't say, but it's there, is this job has insurance. And just because of life and where they're at, that's why he has that job. Yet he is supremely passionate and very talented in music composition, and he's a content creator when it comes to music, anything music oriented. And he's done it before. He's got film scores for at least two movies that he's done the film score for. And he's worked in a church, and he's done all of these things, yet that's not his full-time job. And part of what I'm helping him with is he's already recognized where he wants to go. Now it's getting his head right, because one of those that from an Enneagram, from his the map of who he is, which is what I consider the Enneagram, he's one of those that for him it's easy to put up with a whole lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And you got if and it's I couldn't have done what he's done, but he's put up with all this stuff being an apartment manager for all of these years and dealing with all this stuff, and yet, you know, the music's still inside him. And so those are the things. What I would say is if someone is starts to have that feeling that, hey, they're just not in the right, they're not getting the fulfillment, and really, really looking at that. And as a purpose factor coach, in with the purpose factor, we really define purpose as the best of delivering the best of who we are in the service of others, which then turns into the fulfillment we get by delivering the best of who we are. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes perfect sense. I love it. I know that, and I've had conversations like that too with business owners that I, coached and mentored in my last job, and other people, with a more personal connection who own businesses, and they're like, I just don't love what we're doing anymore, but I don't know what else to
Mhm.
do. And, like you're saying, he stays because of insurance. They stay because there's security in that job that they're doing it. They don't love it, but there's security there. And it is scary and so terrifying to walk to the edge of that cliff and say, bye-bye, security, and just fly off. And it's a terrifying place because you never know what's going to come from there.
It's so
But
easy to get those limiting beliefs,
Mhm.
and that's often what happens is we talk ourselves into, I mean, and it would be easy. It's easy right now. Just look at the job market and the things that are out there. It's very scary. You're aware of it. I'm aware of it. Especially over this whole past year, it has been the building of this business for me, for a lot of the things that you're doing, Nikki. So yeah, it's easy to get sucked into that. And part of what I feel my role is, you know, is really being able to build something bigger than myself. And that is my purpose, is to create something that's bigger than myself, and that in a way to create these shared experiences. So yeah, anyway, I think we hit that one pretty well.
We covered that one in my next question.
Oh, did we? Wow. Sorry,
We're so efficient, Darin.
I, I I swear I didn't get the notes ahead of time, so I had no idea.
I know, right? I barely got the notes ahead of time. And I create them. So, Darin, you have been a COO, an Army officer, and now a coach. Can you tell us how your own leadership journey has shaped the tools and the frameworks that you use and that you have created? Because I know you've created your own framework too. So, can you
Yeah,
tell us
yeah,
how your journey framed that?
yeah, very much. So so the military side, it's definitely not as exotic as I wish it was. I was not a Navy SEAL. I never, didn't go overseas. I was Army National Guard. I was an armor officer, and that was a ton of fun. And I've been blessed with both in the military as well as outside of the military. I've been blessed for the most part, not always, but for the most part, having really good leaders that I was reporting to or working for. And so I always tried to learn from them. And part of that blessing is they either knowingly were trying to mentor me a little bit, or just unknowingly they did anyway, or I kind of grabbed some things. And so a lot of what I learned, early on was just that customer service approach and being able to, understand that, hey, people may be angry and they're coming at me, but they're not necessarily angry at me, and it's not about me. And being able to separate that. And that took a little bit. It wasn't instantaneous because I would take it very serious, and I have a pretty soft heart. And so that took a while, but that's a great learning that you have to do that. And then as I went on, and especially as I landed as a COO and really having now a leadership team that was not only in the U.S. but was international. So working with half of the people that were, they were native from Poland, and recognizing the cultural differences. And that was some of the really big learning, because if you look at my background, I was born and raised in Kansas. I grew up in a very, very small town. And so, yes, I am that person that somewhat grew up under a rock. If you, well, and I say that jokingly, but and depending on the age of your listeners or whatever, but if you're familiar with an old show called Leave It to Beaver,
I love that show.
obviously you are. I loved it too. I'm the Beav. My brother was Wally, mom and dad, Ward and June Cleaver. I mean, we were the Beaver. I mean, that was it. And that's how I grew up. And so I ultimately I was in Topeka, Kansas, where I went to high school, and then the University of Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, for my college time. And then, I will say, hey, I'm not from Texas, but I got here as fast as I could. And here in Dallas, and that opened my eyes up. But then being a COO, and having this cultural difference, and really needing to look at, okay, and culture is well, we could spend probably 6 podcasts on culture alone,
Yeah.
but let's to shorten it up. It's so much more than really what we think about it, because there's so many different little facets. And starting to recognize how part of my leadership team, that just how I explain things to you, I would explain, and to you, you'd get it. It would be no issue. Whereas they would go through this whole interpretation that I would never even, I would be like, why? How can you even possibly think that way? Well, that's how we think. Anyway, so it's learning those subtle differences. And then through that role, my CEO was very passionate about the Enneagram, and that I had already known about it and learned, but that really cemented my passion for it. And having always had a passion for personal development and really understanding myself, I dug into that Enneagram because it has so many different layers. And just knowing a person's type can very quickly bring out give you a pretty good picture of who that person is. And it's their motivations. It's not the
Mhm.
behaviors you're going to see, it's those motivations. and then being able to learn about the purpose. And that was kind of the missing piece for me in all of the leadership, is recognizing what is that purpose. And it was always kind of my desire, and then kind of stumbling into that, honestly, and then being able to become a purpose factor coach and facilitator for that was just fantastic.
Yeah. I love what you talk about. When people are mad and coming at you, that doesn't mean they're mad at you
At you.
or that the problem was with you. I had an experience with one of the business owners that I supported, and to say that everything in his world professionally was falling down around his ears is an understatement. It was terrible. He was in a horrible situation. And then just one thing piled on top of another, and it just kept getting worse. And this is a guy that I had a really good relationship with. And I called him up one morning. I had to deliver a message for him. And I wasn't a great one. I called him up to deliver the bad news, whatever it was. And I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that was it, right? I mean, it's just like that one question, "How are you doing?" It's like the dam broke, and every negative, toxic, horrible thought that was in his head just came gushing out.
Mhm.
And like I could picture him sitting in his truck in the parking lot of his business, face flaming red, like, almost wanted to call 911 and have him there on standby, right? Just in case he worked himself into a heart attack. I was really concerned about him, but he was just unloading everything. And earlier in my career, I would have taken that as a personal assault and gotten my feelings hurt and tried to deflect or defend or whatever. But I had come far enough, and I've come even farther now, to know that that had nothing to do with me. That had absolutely nothing to do with me, and had everything to do with the fact that he needed, in that moment, a safe place to vent, to explode, to
Mhm.
let it all out. And I learned to accept and really I learned to appreciate the fact that he saw me as that safe place and just unloaded everything. And I didn't interrupt. I just let him keep going for like 20 minutes.
Wow.
And when he finally stopped, he was like, "Damn, I'm sorry. I had a lot to get out." I was like,
But
"Yes, you did. Howard, let me start over. How are you today?" And he says, "You
exactly,
know what? I'm better now. Thank you."
exactly. What a
And
beautiful moment.
yes. And and we never ever had a problem in our work relationship. And anytime I needed to deliver bad news, you know, I just I just learned to get in front of it. Bad stuff happens. And if we try to hide behind it and not get in front of it, it's not going to do anybody any good. And so love listening to you talk about, learning how to not take offense and learning to,
Well, learning to be able to,
work in
so
those.
so an interesting piece is just to, if it's okay, I want to add to that, because certain Enneagram types um, are more in more emotional or more emotionally aware than others.
Hmm.
And I will admit that sevens, we're not that aware of our emotions. We're not that good with it. And most importantly, if there is a scale from, let's call it negative 100 to 100, and negative 100 is the really ugly, horrible emotions, bad, traumatic, all of that. And the 100 is the ecstatic, the beautiful, most awesome, all of that. Sevens work from about, they're about as low as they go, is about 25, maybe 30 and upward. They're the high side. So imagine, and my number one, my core fear is pain. So, and that's real or perceived. That doesn't mean that somebody's going to hit me, hurt me, or whatever. That's any perception of what my brain might perceive as fear, which means if this meeting's going to bore me or something, that's painful. Boredom is painful because that comes across to me as anxiety. So I don't want to be bored. So I don't want to participate. But imagine that type of a situation, and now you've got someone that has that emotional range, and being able to sit with someone in that, and that's the part that I've worked on to then be able to really recognize, okay, this doesn't mean I need to run away. This is an opportunity for me to be present in a way that is going to create something bigger and better, and and learning that. And then even as you I think you had mentioned there, oh, being able to handle those negative emotions in those pieces. But the other piece is what happens when you need to let somebody go. And so that becomes, again, for someone that wants to avoid pain and is happy and wants to, hey, let everybody be happy, let's kumbaya, let's make things go. And then, oh, hey, oh, by the way, sorry, no longer. And being able to move and do that in a way that still is graceful and still provides uh, a great or a safe environment for that person, so that then they're walking away. Maybe they're not saying thank you, but they're at least saying, okay, I get it, and move on to
Right.
my next
They're
role.
not walking out in the parking lot and slashing your tires.
Exactly. Important safety tip. Absolutely. Absolutely. No slashing tires.
Yes, yes. And I also have noticed, it's almost easier for, at least for me, in the workplace to take someone else's rage and aggression and all of their emotions. It's easier to take that in the workplace than it is in personal life.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's like when things get, we had a situation not too long ago where things got emotionally charged. And, there were emotions coming from all kinds of different directions. And I was like, I can only focus on you. I just could not focus on the others. I could only focus on one.
Hmm.
And I had to pick which one. And kind of like we have to do in, well, work and everything else and in operations, you kind of have to triage the situation. And it was like, okay, we're having a breakdown over here, and we're here and here and here. I'm having all these breakdowns around me. Which one's the worst? And, based on the information that I had at the moment, I had to pick the worst. And I'm not sure I did the right thing. Uh, but, sometimes we can't do the right thing. We can just lead with our heart and our best intentions.
And
Um,
yeah, do the best we
and
possibly can.
yeah, and it's tricky. Um, Can you talk a little bit, because I don't want us to run out of time before we do it. Can you talk a little bit about your bold GPS and walk us through what that looks like for a leader or a team to engage with that?
Gotcha. Thank you. And I appreciate you asking that question, because it was part of one of the other earlier questions of how I got to there, and I hadn't had a chance. So if we were to continue on when I was telling about kind of how I got to my leadership and the leadership pieces that all came together, as I was learning about the Enneagram, then was introduced to the purpose factor as I was looking at it and recognized it started to make it. What really made sense to me was this: the Enneagram has been described as it's a map of who you are. And we all can have this map. The challenge is we don't often have a guide or even a teacher or even just someone to help us out to understand that map. And so I was like, hey, I can have that role. That'd be kind of fun. But it's like, okay, but just having that, where are you going to go with that? And that's where that purpose becomes the lighthouse and the goal, and not necessarily a destination. It's just a lighthouse of a direction of going. And so I wanted to put those together and say, all right, that starts to become that bold guided purpose system. So bold GPS, bold guided purpose system of understanding that the self-awareness of who you are and having that map. Also then having your purpose as the lighthouse and direction to go towards. How can you help leaders lead more confidently, and live with purpose. And so taking all of that, plus then kind of if you have the big cauldron there and we're swirling it together, the years of my life, the fact that I've had my own executive coach for 13 plus years, and his knowledge that he's imparted onto me. For the 5 years I was a COO, I was also an EOS integrator, and so wanted to put some of that operational pieces into the Bold GPS so that, okay, it's not just some thing, that we can operationalize it and start to turn it into things that we can do over and over. So from an individual or a team standpoint, what that looks like, and there's kind of stages of it. So there's kind of a starter, which is kind of an introductory of doing something with the Enneagram to understand what your type is. Purpose factor, to understand there's four different components of the purpose factor. So you learn those four components, how that comes together to make up your purpose. Having that, and that's kind of the starter, and 90 minutes with me. So, hey, to understand, let's kind of build out, okay, what does this look like for you and where can this take you, for instance? And then whether, again, kind of for a team, for whether it's a half day, a day, or I'm also introducing a 6 month kind of Bold GPS ongoing work where that's going to be a group cohort of basically digging into more depth in each area, whether it's the Enneagram type or the purpose factor. And then how does that impact your day to day? And based on your goals and where you want to go, how does that help you? And how do you avoid the potholes, the road bumps, the maybe sometimes the detour signs that we have in our map? How do we avoid those and work through those, understanding your Enneagram type, as well as stay true to and work into our purpose, and make sure that we're avoiding the things that frustrate us, and we're leaning into the things that fulfill us. And those are all the things that I do when I work, whether it's individual or with a team, being able to bring, because the team dynamics can be really, really powerful, especially with a leadership team that maybe they know they're a little dysfunctional, maybe they don't know they're a little dysfunctional. I would argue that just about every team has some dysfunction, because usually when there's more than one person there, there's some dysfunction. But anyway, but what's nice is knowing things. Well, you and I talked about it before. You've been working with your own accountability team, and there's a whole aspect of you that they didn't know anything about. But and this is a little different. This isn't about someone's background. This is about how they internally, their motivations and their fears, and as those can be shared and understood, so that when and I believe every leadership team needs an Enneagram type 6 on there, because they're the loyal skeptic. They're very loyal, but they're skeptic because their biggest fear is fear itself. So they're the ones that are going to be the devil's advocate. You're gonna have the gee whiz great idea. Hey, let's take this. Let's create this new product. Oh, hey, that new product that could have, they're going to be they're going to be that person in there. But you got to have them, because if you don't, there's companies, there's teams, you've seen them, they go right off the cliff, and next thing you know, they have the coolest product that nobody knows about and nobody's ever bought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those are the things that I do that can help, whether it's individual or teams, companies, and how they want to deploy those things.
I love that. So as we start to wrap up here, do you have any last parting thoughts or messages to any leaders who might feel like they're carrying too much, but they're not really sure what to change? Like you said, is there dysfunction? Do they even recognize the dysfunction? Where might they start? Well, yeah, where might they start for you?
Well, obviously, welcome an opportunity to have a conversation with them, because I think that's the biggest and best place to start, is have a conversation. I don't think any coach is the end all be all for any one person. So it's about a personal and the right fit, whether that again is one on one or even with your company team. Um, I think a lot of times, I think a lot of times it's one of those things where a person that that is going to want me, someone like me, to help them and work with them, they may not necessarily be the one that knows it, but someone close to them or around them does. And it's in those situations where it can be a recommendation of, hey, have you ever thought about talking to someone like this? And the biggest thing with coaching of any variety, and especially with the things that I'm doing, is there does need to be at least a recognition and awareness and a desire for knowing more about yourself and the willingness to be even just fractionally just a little bit vulnerable. And then there's the desire to, okay, if I want to be, whether it's a 0.001% better tomorrow or 1% better tomorrow or whatever that is, but there's a genuine desire to say, hey, I know there's a better version of me somewhere, and I want to start putting myself on the path to that. And that's where it really makes a big difference. And again, whether it's a individual, I described it as an individual, but that can be a team. That can be your leadership team that you've just formed. You've got these new people. You've got the owner that's probably excited and the visionary. Hey, he's going all these directions. Hopefully, there's someone like you or like me in my former life as a COO and operations and trying to keep the trains running on time and all of that. And then there's all the people in between, and you're throwing them together and saying, hey, we're going to make something awesome. Great. Yes, sometimes that magically happens. It doesn't. That's a misnomer because something happens that creates that magic. And I feel that working with me, working with someone like me, and especially how I've kind of really blended that bold GPS to create that guided purpose system that to bring people together to know more and then to be able to work and live into, hey, what causes this person to work great and to work in their best. And that's the other beauty of what I do is it's not a replacement for companies that are they love the strength finders. I love the strength finders. I think that's one of the best, one of the really great tools out there. Or if you're using the new things like Working Genius, that's pretty new, that's out there, or Myers Briggs, DISC, Colby. I mean, make a list. There's a bazillion of them, and I've probably taken most, if not all. I have no way I've taken all, but I've taken a few of them anyway. I think you get my point. That's where I
Yeah,
think the secret sauce can be.
I love that. That's great. Well, Darin, I want to thank you for bringing your grounded and powerful insights today. Your work with Bold GPS is obviously giving leaders strategies, but also adding in clarity and courage to lead from who they really are and who they want to be. Not just who they are, but who they want to be. And so, for those who are listening who want to move from burnout to clarity or who feel like they've outgrown the role they're still performing in, go check out Darin's website and his work at yourboldsolutions.com. And Darin, can they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Please do.
And
Please do.
that's
That's
just
probably even better than the website.
all right. So, LinkedIn is better than the website. Until next time, keep scaling with heart. Darin, thank you so much for being here today. This was
Thank
great.
you so very much, Nikki. This was awesome.